What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another weekend review show where we take a look at some of the content from NFL Week 16. I'm going to show you cash lineup I put together, or actually I put a few together here this week. I'm going to show you the cash lineups I wound up making and how we came up with that, and then just another successful week of NFL cash game play, which has been awesome. And I love these look back shows to see how the lineups came together, how the content pointing us to these lineups, and just how successful across the board it's been to play cash games in NFL this season and win. One of the things I talked about, and I've learned something this year. And, it's week 16. This was really the last serious slate of the season. I've learned something. I've learned that the field, we've talked about this every week, but it just continues to come true. The field for NFL DFS players has gotten to the point where it's so projection focused that we can essentially determine what people are going to do for the most part in these cash games every single week. And we're able to use that knowledge to win, really, to get that slight edge. The first thing is always figuring out what people are going to do. And then what can we do maybe a little bit different, maybe not a little bit different to get the edge. Now, the big question, so a lot of you guys have been talking to me, just before we came into this show about, decisions that were being made. And we knew a bunch of the decisions this week. Now, the main one being the big inflection point this week was, should we go with a Kelsey lineup that generally required punting almost all of the wide receiver positions, or should we kind of play it cheaper at tight end and pay up for some wide receivers? And right off the bat, my take on week 16 was there were no wide receivers on the slate that looked sexy enough to want to pay up for. So I already knew going in, and if you take a look at Dom Station, you'll see this too as we sort by our projection system, as we sort by fantasy points per dollar, that you can't really find any high-priced wide receivers anywhere. You've got to just keep going and going and going and going until you find a high-priced wide receiver on this list. So it was very obvious this week that most of the high-priced wide receivers just were not worth paying up for. Look at this again. Just to be clear, I've got this sorted by fantasy points per dollar. And as you go down this list, they're all cheap. They're 3K, 4K, 3K, 4K. There's a 5K, but he's 15 wide receivers down. Can't really find wide receivers on the list that were kind of worth paying up for. So that was an interesting decision point this week. There was no Stephon Diggs. There was no Devontae Adams available. And the same thing happened at the running back position, where we had this crazy slate where all of the super stud type running backs just were not on it. So we wound up with a situation where you just had these sort of less exciting running backs. No one that made you crazy wanting to pay up for him. I mean, Montgomery was the closest thing because of that matchup. And we kind of like Eckler every week because he gets the passing upside. But shit, Eckler hasn't shown that you need to pay up for him. Like, he hasn't had a great game. There was no Kamara on this slate. I love this. Guys, I want you to understand how unlikely it is to cash 7 out of 8 weeks. It's so unlikely. Again, this is like, if you think about sports gambling, if you're hitting at 55%, you're profitable. If you're hitting at 60%, you're like the greatest sports gambler in the history of sports gambling. That's how difficult it is to hit at 60% at anything that is a 50-50 odds. And here you are, like, cashing every week, cashing 7 out of 8. This is not this phenomenon, I believe, and I've been thinking about this. What I believe the reason this is occurring for a lot of you guys, and some not, but for a lot of you guys, is because the industry is so focused on projections that we can get an edge on them. Like things have flipped. Back when I started, there was no such thing as projections, and I guess I'm old school like that. When when I started doing DFS, guys, in 2011 and 12, there was no such thing as projections. It wasn't even a thing. There were no optimizers and there were no projections really. You just like had to pick the players that you thought were in a good spot. So I come from a background of looking at every single game and saying, all right, what is this? That's why we do the Geeks Vegas line show every Wednesday. I come from this background of NFL, and it's very different from other sports, of analyzing each game and trying to find angles and things that people won't be on that we can get on, or things that just make a lot of sense that look like great plays, right? And you have to find them. That's my background. I was writing an article about this in 2012, breaking down DFS plays for NFL, a long form article. I did that for years until I realized other people were doing it really well. I didn't need to keep writing a long form article. Plus, I do podcasts and videos and I do my sheets now. But it's all about, I basically figured out doing the sheet was like a better way to convey the information. But in the end of the day, not everybody's analyzing these games. So let's go and take a look at what I did this week. This week was a little bit interesting. So again, we're from the background of a weird slate where absolutely nobody jumped off the page. Got to play this guy. You got to pay up. So one of my thoughts was Travis Kelce's such a super consistent tight end. Maybe you should pay up for him. The problem with that was there was also Don Parham Jr., who was 2,500 Stoneman, and I love me a Stoneman salary player who's going to get snaps in my lineup. And then, of course, Austin Hooper was going to be playing for a Browns team that had no starting wide receivers, so that looked like a really great play. So that was really, really exciting. So let me show you what I ended up doing in cash games a little bit. I was trying to find like a player against that whose lineup I could show as a nice demonstration of, a good opposing. There's my 167 score, but I couldn't find a player against that was like a known player. Part of my issue this week, and I'm going to, again, this is process related. Yeah, this is already going back to the showdown, so that's not good. This is process related. I had a really hard time settling on a cash lineup this week because of all the choices. So what I ended up doing was making a few different lineups and kind of laddering them up. And the last lineup that I made that I try to put in as many head-to-heads as I could was this first one right here. You can see I did 18 head-to-head lineups. I actually entered 100 head-to-head lineups, but there was only 2 minutes to go for the slate to lock. And what ended up happening was only 18 of them got picked up. So it was a real disappointment in terms of the dollar amount. But let's see what we did. All right, so in my primary cash lineup, which I'm calling this because I use this for my head-to-heads, I scored 167 fantasy points. I went with Jalen Hurts, Montgomery, and Eckler. So Montgomery and Eckler, if you took a look at the chalkboard, first of all, Jalen Hurts, I played him in every single lineup. It's weird that, again, a lot of you guys are saying Jalen Hurts had a bad day. He didn't have a bad day. He put up 25 points. That's fucking awesome. And he's one of the highest scoring quarterbacks on the slate. Just because a guy put up 40 last week doesn't mean anything. All we're looking for are these 25-point performances. So there was only 2 quarterbacks that anybody used in cash games this week. It doesn't matter. You guys are talking about, you're not understanding. Again, let's get it. People only use two players, maybe 3. But it was probably mostly 2. It was Mahomes or Hurts. Some people use Deshaun Watson, but most people use Mahomes or Hurts. So when Mahomes only scored 22 or 21 or 22 points, Hurts outscores him for 1,500 less, you already won. You won the battle of picking the right quarterback. That was it. I've said this every week. It's about the players that people are using. Now, if we take a look at the DFS Army chalkboard, which is the ultimate tool, once again, you'll see it was, the names were right there, Mahomes and Hurts. It made the choice easy. Now, let's I mean, just go across the chalkboard and you'll see how this thing remains. The chalk. What is the chalkboard? Ownership projections. Why are people projected for high ownership? Most of the time, it's because they're a great play. That's the beauty of ownership projections. They put you on the best plays. The field isn't owning a player because they're bad. So, or they're in a bad spot. Doesn't mean they're going to perform, but there's safety in groupthink in cash games. So, of course, we had Mahomes and Hurts standing out as the two top plays. It's pretty rare that you have quarterbacks standing out this much amongst other ones, so it was pretty clear. At running back, again, choices were made pretty easy by the chalkboard. Montgomery and Eckler were basically locked into your cash lineup. They were going to be 30% owned on the slate. And if you take a look at my lineups, every one of them has Montgomery and Eckler. Montgomery, Eckler. Now, I did one Montgomery. I didn't like Gordon that much, so I didn't love Gordon. So I did one Montgomery, Eckler, Gordon. I did two Montgomery, Eckler, no Gordon. But the primary one, I did not use Melvin Gordon. And the reason I didn't use Melvin Gordon is because I wanted Hooper and Kelsey in the lineup, and I couldn't get two tight ends and squeeze a running back in the flex. So that's what made this week a little weird for cash and took so long for me to settle on my cash lineup. Let's look at some of the good. So a lot of you guys, when you watch my content, you knew that I love Deontay Johnson, I love Jamison Crowder, and T. Higgins was on the radar heavy as well. So yeah, this one, Johnson, Crowder, Higgins were my favorite. You could see my ownerships. I had 41% Crowder. I love Crowder this week. Actually, Mike Williams was somebody I got on very heavy late. I was actually swapping off of there was somebody else in that price range that I liked less. But, you know, T. Higgins also in a great spot. As soon as we found out, so here's another little pivot we did on Sunday. As soon as we found out that Brendan Allen was going to be the starting quarterback for the Bengals, that sort of changed a little bit of the dynamic of the slate, as you can see. Originally, when I thought it was going to be the other quarterback, the much worse one. There you go. I love it. So they had Brandon Allen starting, and with no Tyler Boyd, which meant Higgins was going to have. It's all about targets, right? Higgins was going to have an elevated target share, and again, these things are borne out on the dominant. I'm not just doing this analysis, guys. If you take a look at the domination station and the chalkboard, they all pointed right to Higgins, AJ Green. By the way, I just want to point out, here's the top. This is the domination station. Yeah, Finley is trash. Check this out, though. This is unchanged. The domination station optimizer sorted by fantasy points per dollar. And I'm going to show you something. Obviously, I wasn't playing no Cam Sims. I don't give a fuck who's out for Washington. I'm not playing Cam Sims. I don't know how he did. Maybe he had a fine game, but I'm not playing Cam Sims with Dwayne Haskins or Dwayne Haskins backup throwing to him. So that was out for me. But if you look at the next 3 or 4 wide receivers on the list, now I was all over Jamison Crowder all week, so I was going to elevate him. But AJ Green and T. Higgins both smashed. These are the 2 highest values on the slate. And you know who else smashed? Laviska Shenault put up 17 or 18 fantasy points. Oh, all right. So Sims got you 9, which is actually fine for a 3,300 player. So all these guys did really well. The whole top of the value board smashed. No matter what you did, you wound up with a lot of these guys and you smashed. It wasn't that hard. So you'll see I used a mix of I wish I used Green. He did great. Laviska Shenault and Jamison Crowder. It was just right there on the domination station telling us who to play. Now, my innovation this in many weeks has been to play Deontay Johnson. I think that optimizers have been off on Deontay, that projections have been off on Deontay all season. As you guys know, you guys have been riding the season out with me. You know, I've played him every week. Oh, well, that's a bummer. The fact that it's just one guy that's playing you tells me you're entering wrong, dude. You should have a lot of lineups. Like, look what I do. Let me just make this clear, because I try to get a lot more, but look at my entries. $5, $5, $5. $5 is the cheapest I can do. And again, I put in 50. I only got like a small number, but I always do 50 of the smallest dollar denomination that I can do, and then I move up. So for you guys, you start at $1, you do 50 dollar head-to-heads, and you set them up with 0. Yeah, David Johnson smashed, dude, but fuck David Johnson, but he did smash. but I set them up like this. You can, on DraftKings, you can limit the number of times one person can face you to 1. When the default is unlimited, you have to set that to 1. You want a diverse group of scores against you. When you hit all of them the way that I did, 100% win rate, that's just very special. But more often than not, like if we're closer to the cash lines in these 153 and 140 type lineups, yeah, there you go. Then you'll win some and you'll lose some. That's the beauty of head-to-head. You'll even win head-to-heads when you have a shitty lineup. That's why there's so much safety in these, as long as you limit opponents to 1. So I want to show you what I did for the second lineup, because it looks bad, but note, it won. It won a lot. It cashed in 50-50s. So here you go, lineup number 2, and this was kind of like one of my original cash lineups. This was the 3. This was very chalky in a sense. Actually, I went off a couple things that I really wanted to do, but look, it cashed anyway. That's why I'm saying this week was kind of easy. So again, my primary, I used Crowder, Williams, and T. Higgins as my trio. They were on the chalkboard. They were all standing out as ideal plays. In this next lineup, in that one, I went down to Jets defense, which is something I talked about, that you could go all the way down to Jets defense. Don't worry about it. Don't pay up for defenses in cash. Oh my goodness, if you haven't fucking learned this after all of these shows, I don't know what else to say. Paying up for defenses in cash is almost always a mistake. Now, here you'll see I crushed with the Panthers, but what you don't see is that I didn't pay up for that defense. There was just like that much money left, and I couldn't find where to spend it, so I was like, fine. Don't pay up for cash. Don't pay up for defenses in cash games. It's almost always a mistake. I always say, if you don't go down to a shittier player because you needed 100 or 200 to play this great defense. Just pay down on defense. That's been the approach that works, because it's really hard to predict good defensive performances. We got news late, and this is again a lot of the stuff. We got news late that it was not going to be Alex Smith playing. It was going to be Dwayne Haskins again for Washington. Now, we know that Dwayne Haskins sucks. He's out doing blow, hookers, not giving a fuck about preparation. The team has been very clear about this guy. They don't like him. They don't dislike him because he's great at football, but, his personalities and all. They don't like him because he's not a hard worker and he's a lazy fuck. That's got to be it. And he doesn't give a shit about his team or his teammates. He's out at strip clubs during a week where he's starting. Like, this guy does not give a shit. He got paid. He's just like Zeke. He got paid. Now, he got paid a lot less than Zeke, but he got paid a couple mil. He's made millions. I know they cut his ass. Fuck yeah, they cut his ass. These guys get paid millions. Understand, if you're a 22-year-old kid and you get paid, this isn't part of the cash review, but when you're a 22-year-old kid and you get paid millions of dollars, it can go one of two ways. One way is you're inspired. You feel pressure by all that you're getting paid to perform. And the other way is you're like, I don't give a fuck, yo. I'm rich, bitch. Let's go to the strip club. And you're having good times. You're playing video games, and you're like, I'm the shit. You're an egomaniac. That doesn't work out for football. But again, check it out. So getting back to what we said, T. Higgins ends up going off for a massive score. I hear a lot. Montgomery sucked. I hear a lot. Eckler sucked. It didn't matter. It was all relative. I told you guys going into the slate, this was going to be a low-scoring slate. Now, I'm pissed at myself that I didn't successfully get more action going on my cash lineups. And what I ended up doing was I made a bunch of what I'd call 3-max, and then I put them in some cash games as well. I put them in some cash games. So that's where I'm showing this whole grouping, because I normally only really want to focus on one cash lineup, but as we're leading into lock, there were so many different ways, and I was kind of experimenting with different approaches to lineups, and I kind of like them all. Like, you can see this 153. This was cashy. I put it in a lot of cash games, double ups, and I don't normally do that. I just wanted to kind of record the lineup for all intents and purposes, and it smashed. And you could see what I was thinking here in this one. So this was a version without Kelsey. So with no Kelsey, I was able to get Hooper and Melvin Gordon. This is the trio. Montgomery, Eckler, Gordon. That was the trio, the chalk trio. Austin Hooper I liked because the Browns, high target floor. I'm looking for targets, opportunities. Now, why was this a cash trio? opportunities. What do all of these players have in common? So let's go through each player. Again, Jalen Hurts, we know, running quarterback, great. David Montgomery, no competition on his team for touches in a smash spot. That's simple. Austin Eckler. So with Eckler, Keenan Allen was going to be out. More targets to go around on his team. I figured that would lead to more targets for Eckler. Did it? No. It didn't work out. He got pretty shitty amount of volume, to be honest. His team didn't play that well. So, whatever, but he still produced. More importantly, he was in every cash lineup anyway. So it didn't matter. Deontay Johnson, what do we like about him? Deontay Johnson, I talked about this on every pod, never gets less than 10 targets in a game. How many targets did he have yesterday? And this was with coming out of the game, 14. This is what I want. I want volume in the cash lineup because volume leads to scoring. If you wipe everything else away, volume leads to scoring better than anything else. We're not that great at predicting good defenses, good offense. What we can predict is volume. All right? Volume. All right, Mike Williams, why is he in there? In this one, I actually had this idea, and this is why it's funny. This is why this lineup is grosser, but it's still cashed everywhere. I had this idea that, all right, should I play Jamison Crowder and T. Higgins from games that are shitty with shitty quarterbacks, or I could play like these guys who have good quarterbacks. Mike Williams, I thought, was a great play because with Keenan Allen out, Herbert has to throw to someone. Now, what ended up happening was, he threw to him. He dropped a pass in the end zone, had a chance, but he got 10 targets. The volume was there. It was just like a bad game for the Chargers offense, but the volume was there. So I believe it was the right call. I firmly believe you get me 10 targets for a $4,500 player from Justin Herbert, that's a winning play. So to me, the volume was there. Did it work? No, but you can't judge based on did it work. I'm looking only for volume in these plays. Again, Keenan Allen was out, and I liked the idea of having Eckler and Williams. The targets had to go somewhere. Again, Williams drops a touchdown at one point. He just didn't have a great game. The whole team didn't play that well, but it didn't matter. The volume was there. That was more important. Again, so I'm going down the list. Now, Gage, this was the sketchiest. So in the case of Gage, the reason he's in this lineup was just because as I got to this point, I had Jamison Crowder sitting here. I had Crowder in there, and there was just 800 left over. And so I'm like, all right, well, Jamison Crowder, and this is the problem with, I wanted to spend all of the salary. So I'm sitting here in this lineup. I had Johnson, Crowder, Williams, Hooper, Gordon, Panthers defense. It had this, and there was 800 left over, and it was like this awkward thing. So I was like, what am I going to do with this 800 salary? And I ended up saying, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to leave Jamison Crowder in here. Gage has had a bunch of good weeks, and he's part of that sexy game with lots of potential scoring, that Falcons-Chiefs game, which ended up being a dud. But he was part of that game, and if that game wasn't a dud, then I thought that Gage would have some upside. So in the case of this lineup, I actually changed off of Crowder to Gage just because there was salary left over. That didn't work. Didn't matter. Cashed everything. So my goodness, what did other people do? I have no idea. But every other spot, Austin Hooper, why is he here? All the wide receivers were gone for the Browns, and they had to throw to someone, and it worked. Austin Hooper was a great play, put up 14 points, and he should have done more. Got 15 targets, guys. This is what I'm looking for in my cash. 15 targets. So we were on the right players because the volume was there. Again, I can't predict if he's going to catch the touchdown or not in a game. No one can. But to put a guy in there who's getting 15 targets, I want to fucking play that guy. He got 15 targets. I want volume in my cash lineup. All right, why is Melvin Gordon here? Because I don't normally play Melvin Gordon ever, but Philip Lindsay was out. Gordon was going to get the volume. Now, what ended up happening? Again, that game was kind of a dud. That was part of the problem with Gordon. Problem number 2, they fucking do some bullshit trick plays on the goal line twice, and just it was a weird situation where Gordon should have gotten a touchdown and he didn't. So that was a negative. And number 3, for no explicable reason, randomly, they didn't throw to Gordon the whole game. He had been getting 3-4 targets a game. The other guy, Lindsey, gets 2 or 3 targets a game. So there should have been 5 or 6 targets sitting there for the running back position, and he got 0. You give him 4 targets, another 35 yards, and that touchdown, that's 21 points. So, I mean, it was like nothing to go from this terrible score to 20 points. All right, so Cedric used the double tight end. Yeah, I mean, Kelsey Hooper, it's right here. If you did the Kelsey Hooper lineup, it should have looked very similar to this one. Unless you decided to keep Panthers in there and go down from Mike Williams to like Guyton. So other names that we were on, by the way, and they all worked. I have Michael Gallup in here somewhere. I use some Michael Gallup in some lineups. There he is. So Crowder and Gallup together with Deontay Johnson. This was a great lineup, really, really strong as well. A lot of these sort of other ones. And what I end up doing all week is I just make these different variations. The problem for me this week was I was so on like one approach to making lineups that I couldn't like make really diversified lineups. They all kind of looked very similar because there weren't that many good plays. In the end, to win a tournament this week, you needed Dallas players. You needed Gallup and of course Jameson Crowder was in the mix. Panthers defense. So a lot of the nuts plays are right here in the mix, but you need some Dallas players on there. All right, so this is a beautiful thing. What are we looking for in GPPs? Great question. The first thing I try to do before even making a GPP lineup is decipher what the chalk cash approach is. And again, if we use the chalkboard, we can see it. So in GPPs, we want players with higher variance on the upside and the downside. So I'm not looking for, as an overall, I'm not looking for players that I want volume, by the way, in GPP as well, but I'm looking for upside. So I want players that have a range of results that's fairly wide, where sometimes they might dud, but when it works, they smash. I think more importantly in GPP is just pivoting off of ownership. That's a part that a lot of people miss. Once you've deciphered what the chalk cash game approach is most weeks, you could quickly figure out ways to pivot off of that and do interesting tournament lineups. So if you see that in cash this week, everybody's going to kind of make this decision of they're going to try to pay up for Kelsey, right? And they're going to use these 2 running backs. So you can already start to figure out, all right, let me not use those 2 running. Let me use Nick Chubb. Let me go down and use David Johnson because no one's using him and he ends up smashing. I'm not saying specifically who, but we want to go down the chalkboard. Jonathan Taylor was the ultimate in like an interesting GPP pivot this week. He's still a good spot, a great player, priced about the same as Eckler and Montgomery. As a matter of fact, I bet if we look at our pivot tool, take a look at this tool, which is really cool. I'm not sure how many of you guys are using this, but the pivot tool gives you like interesting ways to get off the chalk. So it's like, David Montgomery going to be chalk. Who can I use to pivot off? Oh, there's Jonathan Taylor, lowest owned, or Ezekiel Elliott, who no one was going to play. Reek Hill chalk, Calvin Ridley. So this just basically shows you similar price players at lower ownership. Are we going to play Melvin Gordon? Here are some pivots off of Melvin Gordon. Yeah, you want to pivot off the chalk. Now, you don't want to pivot off T. Higgins, but if you did and you played Amari Cooper or Lamb or a lot of these guys, you would have smashed. So you want to get off the chalk. Let me explain how tournaments work. This is really important. I'm going to give you the same example I give all the time because I think it clicks in people's heads. How do you win a tournament? Well, you don't win it by doing what everybody else is doing. And I'm going to explain how using an example of the March Madness brackets. Let's say you're in a March Madness bracket against 500 people. And the team Duke is literally 50-50. They have plus 100 odds to win the whole damn thing. Okay? So Duke is such a prohibitive favorite on a 16 there's a 64 game tournament and Duke is 50-50 to win the whole thing. So naturally, most of the people making sheets for it will play Duke. They're going to play Duke. Why? Because they're 50-50 odds to win. So 70% of the lineups are 60% super chalk Duke. 70%. That's the chalkiest. We don't even see that kind of chalk in a giant tournament almost ever. But 70% of these brackets, these 500 lineups, are going to use Duke as the winner. So that means that if Duke doesn't win, 70% of the lineups, there's a 50-50 shot that they lose. 70% of the lineups in your bracket are gone. So what's the smart play? Is it, hey, well, Duke is probably going to win. They're like prohibitive favorites. I got to play Duke. Well, if you do that, then you still have to, you didn't even win anything. You're now just keeping even with the other 70% of the lineups. And your chances of beating out, 300 lineups that all play Duke as the winner is 1 in 300. It's pretty fucking small. That's not good odds. That's all right. So let's calculate that out. 1 in 300. That's 0.33% chance of winning. So in that example, you have a 0.33% chance of winning. 0.33. That's really bad. Now let's say you take the third, North Carolina. They're the third favorite, and their win odds are plus 700, plus 500, plus 500. Let's call that. I don't even know what. I have to open up my hold on. I don't even know what. All right. So let's say the second team, let's just call it, by the way, if you ever want to understand what win odds are, do an odds calculator here, but let's just say the third favorite team has a 10% chance to win, right? So let me see what plus 500 is. 16%. No, even less. Plus 900. Plus 900. Seems like a long shot. Only 10% odds of winning. Okay, stay with me. So the people who pick Duke and are with chalk 70%, Duke wins, they get a 0.33% chance of winning the tournament because they are 1 in 300 in terms of the 300 other lineups in the contest that also pick Duke. So I picked the number 3 favorite team, North Carolina. They're plus 900 to win the whole thing. So they have a 10% win odds. So there's a team above them and a bunch of teams below them. There's another team with like a 18% odds. These guys have 10 and a couple other ones, right? So that final 30% of the tournament, it's kind of spread out between, the second favored, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. People kind of take those teams. And let's say I take this team and only 5% of the entrants actually play North Carolina. So they only have a 10% chance of winning the tournament. But if they do win, I'm up against 5% of lineups. So that 5%, how many lineups is that out of 500? That's 25. So now I've got a 1 in 25 chance. Is that 25? 5% of 500? Yeah, 25 lineups. Now I've got a 1 in 25 chance of winning the whole thing on 10% odds. So what's better? 1 in 25, which let's call that fucking 5% chance, versus 0.33% if Duke wins. You understand the difference? In a tournament, ownership is horrible. Chalk is your enemy because when the chalk hits, you don't advance at all. You still have just about the same odds as you did when you entered the tournament. And you had to be right on something, which you only had a 50% chance of being right on. So you essentially win a 50-50 bet and you don't advance at all. You're still in the same basic spot you were before. You're better off getting off the chalk. All right, so Dave is asking a great question. Yes, so of course in NBA, it's a great tool as well. I'll just show you this, the version for NBA with a caveat. NBA ownerships are much sketchier than NFL ones because so much shit happens in the last half an hour before the NBA slate begins that projected ownerships can never be all that accurate. What they're accurate on is like on some stud plays a little bit, but let's take a look at NBA real quick. We've got a chalkboard and we have a pivot tool. These should be empty right now. I don't even know if they're going to be populated, but let's see. Watson, David Johnson, Eckler. Eckler wasn't even a great play. Jameson Crowder, T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, Kelsey, and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, Panthers defense. Fuck, like most of these guys were in my cash lineup. You just added David Johnson and Brandon Cooks. I mean, how CD Lamb? How easy was it to fall on that fucking line? $1 million. It's crazy. We were so on it this week, guys. We were so on it. Chalkboard. Yeah, we still don't have ownership, so this isn't going to show anything. But yeah, in general, you can use it, Dave, and you should. NBA. So we'll transition a little bit to NBA. NBA is so projection heavy that right now, let me explain the difference between NBA 4 years ago and today. 4 years ago, 3 years ago, people would watch the games and like play players that they liked. A lot of people were doing that. Like a lot of people were just handcrafting lineups using their knowledge and whatever. Today, 95% of the people, certainly playing in cash games or definitely in cash games, 95% of the people who are playing cash games are just basically rolling out some version of an optimal. They're using projections. They're leaning on points per dollar value. They're leaning on the numbers massively. And here's the thing, and I get that. That's the right move in cash, but there's two things you have to understand for NBA. Number one, everybody's doing that, so you don't have such an edge. We have awesome NBA Keg is amazing at NBA projections. Okay, ours are spectacular. We've measured them. Yeah, Mutt on the early. Mutt killed it this week. I wanted to show you guys something with Mutt like earlier this week. I don't have it open, but man, he fucking killed it. So we'll do more. He killed it, especially on the Saturday slate. He had Saturday slate, Evans core. I mean, the core, Wilson Jr. core. I mean, the core all smashed like unbelievably. He nailed it. Brady core. Those were 3 core plays. They were like the nuts. So yeah, make sure you're reading Mutt's notes every week. But with NBA, we're going longer than I was expecting because we're getting off topic here. NBA, everybody's using an optimizer. So you can really start to tell in tournaments, they're all playing the top projected values as well. So tournaments for NBA is rewarding getting off chalk greater than ever before. And this happened last year, and I saw it throughout the season, where everybody has really good projections. That's what I'm saying. Keg's projections are great, but our competition's projections are also good. And everybody's trying their best to have the best projections. And so it's not like you have such a crazy edge on the field. You don't, because they're also using great projections. So how do you get the edge? You used, there we go. There we go. I'm just reading your comments, but yeah, Mike, you've been here. I feel like you've been here, man. I've seen your picture here in these chats quite a bit. Any chance of doing 2 or 3 NFL slates in the future? We will do the 2 or 3 game NFL slate ownerships, and we do, but not if there's a main slate. So what we can't do is start to break it down. A, the way our tech works, and B, it's just really hard to do this. Like, there are so many freaking slates that we can't do everything. So what we're trying to do is, for NFL, we do the main slate. We're not doing a morning only and an after, an early and a late slate. But like for the playoffs, there'll be a 3-game slate. For this Saturday, we had ownerships in for that 3-game slate. So when it's like a standalone slate, we can do it. But when they're bunched in the middle of other slates, there's just too many freaking slates. It's just there's slates everywhere, and you see it. NBA has that too. There's a turbo. We can't do it all. So we do our best to do the main slate ownerships. We do them for showdowns, which not a lot of people have. And, they've been awesome. And I think those things are really, really important. But again, part of DFS Army is we're different from other sites, guys. We don't just do a tool. Like, you have sites that are just there to give you. I'm always working on our tools, like our optimizer. There are sites that exist that cost twice what we charge, and it's just for an optimizer. There's no real projections of use, and there's no advice, and there's no article content or anything. It's just an optimizer. So those guys, and they charge double what we do. So they're able to put 100% of their resources into just, the optimizer and shit like that. It's certain very few things. I mean, there's a lot of sites like that. There are other sites that only do advice and articles and cheat sheets and shit like that, or chat and coaching. They only do that. And then they make you buy an optimizer from one of those optimizer companies. And so they end up charging you double or triple what we charge. But they're using that to put all these resources. Well, they're just to line their pockets, but also they're able to have more resources devoted to just one thing. So, a site that only does advice, listen, they can hire a bunch of radio personalities and shit like that, guys who don't know anything about DFS usually, to hype it up. A lot of those sites do stuff like that. The tools guys, they're only focused on an optimizer tool. They don't do any sort of content, anything like that. So we do it all here. And part of it is, I didn't want to, I want it to be for the everyman. Part of what DFS Army was always about was, let me get people in here who are like the regular people that these asshole like sharps are abusing, and let's level the playing field. And that was my whole point of starting DFS Army, guys. I saw it because I was on the sharp group and I saw what they thought about people. As a matter of fact, I lost friends when let me tell you a little story. When I started DFS Army, and I was like in a crew, I was aware of and friendly with a lot of like the big players. I was one of the higher ranked NFL guys out there. Again, I had a known blog and whatever. Started DFS Army, and I created tools and I started teaching the techniques for how to be successful. And these guys were like, I don't want to do that. Why am I going to give up my edge? Fuck them. Fuck that. Like, they didn't want tools and the idea of even using how to make a cash line. They didn't want you guys knowing that. There were people who are like, fuck you, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because of that. Because of what I came up with. Right. But I said, no, I mean, I understand that I could keep having an edge or whatever, but I saw the future on the advice and tool side, because I saw such a discrepancy between what the quote unquote pros were using and what non-pros were doing to craft lineups. Now, times have changed since 2013 and 14 when that was going on, and 15. But I mean, there was a pro out there, guy Max Alduri, who quote unquote a pro. He was the number one player in the world, and all he did was figure out how to swap lineups really fast using a macro. That was before we had the ability to do it the way we do it now. We're using the domination station and the edit process. He was using a macro to do it, and that guy ran shit. He dominated. A lot of the pros, quote unquote, were using projections before anybody knew what projections were, or how to get them, or how to do good ones. And by the way, it's not selfish. Being selfish is good. I'm selfish too. Everybody's selfish. But yeah, they didn't want to. I came to some of those top pros and I was like, hey, you want to join me in this venture? I'm going to start making tools for people. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Fuck that. I'm making money, taking money from those guys. My thought was, if we don't have regular players able to be successful, then DFS as an industry will die. So how do we spread the word? And then it's every single year. How do we figure out so my big thing, I was like, how to figure out how to allow the regular player to have a chance to win just like a pro, just like the sharps. What are the sharps doing? What are we not doing? What do the sharps do that we don't know how to do? Number one is they know how to focus on cash games and how to be a profitable player. That's one thing. And you guys know I've been teaching you that. They focus very heavily. As a matter of the best sharp guys out there, they play so much money. A big difference between me and like the next guy who's like a super big time player, or any of us, and like they just have more balls a lot of time. They're like, the same thing as me. I'm putting in, I usually do $1,500 or $2,000 a week in cash games on the main slate for DraftKings. These guys will put on $50,000 or $100,000. Like, that's the difference. And when they're winning, like, remember how you guys said, hey, I've cashed 7 or 8 weeks. Like, imagine you were doing that, but you were putting $10,000 or $50,000 a week on the line. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Now, the problem is, if you tried to do that after going 9, 8 out of 10, Guarantee the first week you try to do it, you lose it all. That's just how it goes when you step up your volume. I've never seen a situation where I ever try to step up volume and I didn't lose that first week. So that kind of thing. But I mean, US Carolina, you said you won 8 out of 9 weeks. Imagine you were playing serious money. That's like the main difference. These guys have the balls, they have the wherewithal, they have the experience, and they have the head space. These are a lot of these guys come from a poker background where poker guys live in the world of probabilities. If they see that they have a 5% edge on the field, they will go all in. Like when you're playing poker, you got 10,000 in chips, doesn't matter. You've got a 55% chance to win hand, all in. And when they lose, they don't even care because they're like, I don't care. If I do that every time I have a 55% chance, then over the course of 1,000 times of doing it, I'll make money. And they don't care. My goodness, you're not in Slack, bro? Are you fucking serious? How did you even find this video? Get in Slack, man. Write into support at DFS Army and have them invite you. Support at dfsarmy.com. Write in. It's only for VIP, not for light members. No, man. We got so much more. This YouTube is just like nothing. Go and you got to get in the Slack, bro. You got to get in Slack. Just write to support at DFS Army. They'll resend your invite. Everybody who signs up as a VIP gets invited. Yeah, bankroll management. This is one of the last. This is probably be the last cash game review I do this year. So we're taking a little longer time here. We'll talk about a little NBA stuff. But more importantly, to understand. Yeah, I mean, Slack is, by the way, Mike, you missed this shit. Slack is where we got off of Texans defense and got onto Panthers defense on Sunday. That was a beautiful pivot. That was one of my favorite pivots of all time. And literally, it was one of you guys who wrote me in Slack and was like, hey, Haskins starting now. Should we get on Panthers? And I was like, fuck yeah, we should get on Panthers. Good idea. You know, like, okay. Fuck yeah, we should get on the Panthers. So if you weren't in Slack and in my channel hanging out in the Geek Speak channel, you probably missed that. But some of the shit happens late, man. Some of the shit, like news hits and we got to pivot. Do I run to my sheet and start typing in changes at 12:30? Hell no, I'm not doing that. But if you're in Slack and you're hanging out, you're getting that information. You're getting updates. My goodness, I should show on Slack the shit that we put out there. You know, Keenan Allen is out. Time to get on this. You know what? Rams wasn't even that bad. Yeah, and we hire. See, this is what I was getting at before when people said with the tools. We pay a team of DFS pros, guys who are really good at this, who don't do other things, most of them, to answer questions. So like they're on the staff, they're in these channels, coaching channels, answering a lot of these questions. Listen, helping out. Yeah, I think our Slack is the best thing we do. Guys, for NBA, I want to show it. I should fucking show this on screen. Hold on. Let me show you something. If you haven't been in Slack, I'm going to show you something. Hopefully, okay, let me go right to it. NBA breaking. Take a look at this. This is the most important channel. Here, let me bring this up on screen. If you're playing NBA and you don't have Slack, right? You're missing out. The NBA breaking news channel, it's giving you everything you need. Get him out. He's out. Embiid out. You know, it's telling you who to pivot to. Minutes limit. Get him out. Or get on this guy. Who should pivot to? So the Slack is so critical, guys. Especially for more so NBA than any other sport, by the way. More so. Because in NBA, it's all last minute. And so you're getting this analysis in this breaking news channel and a coach's notes channel where they'll kind of break it down. They'll break it down for you a little bit. So those are really important things. You need to be in Slack for NBA more than any other. I have it open all the time. I have the breaking news channel. I'm not special. I play just NBA when when NFL is like, right, I could finally play a little bit as NFL comes to an end. You better fucking get it before ESPN does. That's our goal. Like, we have people whose job it is to monitor NBA news and put that shit in our channel off of Twitter, off of, beat writers. That's the whole idea. That channel alone is worth a subscription to DFS Army. If I would subscribe just for the breaking news channel. That's like, I always say this all the time. With the stuff that we're doing, people would pay more than what we do just for ownership projections. Like, if you wanted to just buy really good ownership projections from a spot, you'd pay more than our whole sub. There'd be no optimizer, no coaching, nothing. Just ownership projections. That's it. I buy ownership projections, $40 a month, $50. So, like I said, what we're charging, I know it's low compared to the industry, but it's not low because, and we're actually changing price. We're raising up a little bit. We're changing our structure a little bit, not for current members, but anybody new in the new year. But we're way below everybody who's comparable to us, half or less. Number one, because we own our own tools. I don't buy the Op Domination Station from someone else, so I don't have to charge you for that. I own that shit. I made it. Number two, the whole point of DFS Army was average Joes competing on a level playing field with pros. And I felt like, wow, if I charge $80 or $90 a month, like some of these other sites that you guys just mentioned, some of you guys mentioned just the tool only that costs $50 just here in the Slack. Other sites that sell, that are tools and advice, they're at $90, $100. So they're more than double what we charge, and they're worse. They don't help. They're not actually available. Maybe some of these are good, actually. Some of these sites are fine. I don't want to knock anyone. Some sites are fine. I don't think anybody has a community like we have. And nobody produces winners in the same way that we do. Because we're teaching how to use the tools, and we're here, and you know it. You see it. You see it at the top of the leaderboards. These guys just are not producing winners the way that we are. That doesn't mean just being part of DFSR means you're going to win all the time, but it means you have a real chance at it because you're using tools that are giving you that ability to compete level. Michael, I'm going to tell you something. I can't look at an NBA game. I hate the sport. I don't watch NBA basketball. I don't hate the sport. I hate baseball. I don't watch any basketball. It doesn't matter. You don't need to watch any basketball or know anything about it to compete. You can use our tools, and you should be. DFS goes year round. There's so much going on. We're coming to the end of the season, guys, and there's so much going on. It doesn't end. NFL ends, and the only thing that ends for me is now I can look at other DFS sports too. It doesn't just have to be NFL for me. Fuck, this offseason, I mean, I should show you my leaderboard. Let me show you something. But it doesn't have to be NFL. There's so many great. I love NASCAR. I love MMA. I get involved in the content side for it. NBA is great. It's very, very daily. It's constant. I like esports. I'm going to show you something. Check this out. I'm going to put this up on screen. All right, this is my personal Roto Grinders profile. All right, and this is my biggest scores list right here. You want to see the biggest scores? Look what it is: esports and MMA. It's not even football. So in the off season, there's so many things going on that we can do. We're so much better than other sites at esports. Our tools are so high above everybody else's for League of Legends or for NASCAR. I bet if you look at the NASCAR ones will show up. I don't know anything. You think I watch NASCAR? I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have fucking NASCAR in Brooklyn. There it is. Look at that. I mean, NASCAR is showing up at the top of the list. NFL too. Listen, I don't fuck around, but there's your big NBA win. But this is my leaderboard, right? It's MMA, esports, NBA. I'm the NFL guy. MMA. Here's a bunch of NFLs. Esports. Fucking crushed esports this year. There's some NASCAR wins. I feel like NASCAR wins are missing. I was in the championships for NASCAR this year. Anyway, all of that using DFS Army tools. I don't use anything else. So it's really, really great. We'll have a great offseason. I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Another week of crushing NFL cash. It was a good, fun conversation just talking about DFS in general here. So we went a little different direction with this one. But I hope everybody smashed their cash lineups this week. We've got one more full slate of games. Somebody asked me if week 17... he's so good at it. I know. Somebody asked me if week 17 is cash viable. I say yes. We're going to figure out which teams have something to play for, which teams have nothing to play for. We will get all of that sorted out by midweek. And that is what I do. I don't fuck around with teams that might rest guys. I just avoid it. Like, I don't allow that question in week 17 to get to me. I just avoid it. I'm like, if there's any chance of these guys resting, like the Chiefs have first place locked up, everything, I'm not playing them. Now, after the week, they might go off. I don't give a fuck. That's my approach to week 17. I'm not going to take teams who have a chance of resting players. I'm going to focus on teams that must win. And we're going to try to figure out morning and afternoon games and figure out, oh, shit, I don't want to play guys from an afternoon game that might not need to play if something happens in the early. So we're going to figure out all those scenarios. That'll be the first thing we do for week 17. Once we get that down, we'll be able to hone in on what we need to do. Anyway, all right, let's wrap it up there, guys. Good luck. I hope this week was as good for you as it was for me, and you smashed your cash lineups again. Don't worry if you didn't. Again, a great season. I hope this season has been great. Remember, a great season. If you cashed 10 out of 17 slates, you did amazing. If you did better than that, then you fucking destroyed it. And I think a lot of us did better than that. And I think it's a testament both to the tools, the approach, and let's hopefully this will continue in years to come where we still have this edge. So, but it was a great 2020 of NFL. As fucked up as 2020 was, it was a great 2020 of NFL DFS with DFS Army, and we're going to keep that going with NBA and with NASCAR and with golf and with all the offseason MMA, all the offseason sports, and of course, the playoffs coming up. I love the playoffs. I love the 6-game. I like the 3-game, all of it. So we got a great NFL coming up. And yes, New England Buffalo smash game onslaught, Buffalo onslaught tonight. We're going to break that down soon as well. Hell yeah. All right, guys. Wrapping it up there. Good luck tonight. I'll be back with a Wear My Turds Out at Showdown Breakdown, hopefully with Josh, DFS Up North, and Bobby Wow. We'll get the trio together here and do a big Wear My Turds Out show. So that's coming up soon. Look out for that in Slack. Take care, everyone.